Better? Hey, there we go. Let's try that again. Think about that word resurrection. A return to life. It's a process, right? It talks about the act of the Spirit, our consciousness, leaving this physical form that we inhabit currently and entering the spiritual world, the kingdom of heaven, becoming one with Jesus Christ. Just think about that. The spirit, the consciousness leaves this physical form and is transformed. I want you to go deeper with it. I want you to think a little more deeply about this. You know, I always ask you to think deeply about things. All right? What's that going to feel like? What do you see during it? Do you see anything? People who experience near-death experiences sometimes talk about this. They say that they feel as if they're being lifted above their physical form, that they feel as if they're ascending. Some people describe a tunnel of light, Jesus at the very end with welcome open arms. Some people say it's just an immediate wake up into the perfected world where our ancestors and our loved ones race to meet us and embrace us. Think about that. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Some people say, again, near-death experiences are some of our primary source material for this, if any. Ocean waves, rushing water, nothing at all. Does it feel like anything? Does it have a taste? Are there any sensory applications at all to resurrection, the event of the life leaving this body? Perhaps not. Maybe those sensory aspects, sight, hearing, feeling, taste, are just simply attached to this physical form. What about when does it occur? It's a big question. Does the spirit leave this physical form when the heart stops pumping blood, when we take our last breath, when the central nervous system shuts down and the brain sends out its last spasmodic signal? I'll caveat that, what about with open heart surgery, where they physically stop the heart? How does the spirit interact with the physiology of our body and know it's not yet time? How about near-death experiences? People who actually return, the spirit comes back to the body. The relationship between the spirit and this physical form. Timelines, how long does it take? A millisecond? Fraction of a second, 5 seconds, an hour, 3 days? Some people say the spirit, once it leaves this physical form, wanders this earth for 3 days. For 1,300 years of Christian thought, millions of Christians believed, they lived, died, believing in the concept of a waiting room. Their spirit was headed to this place called purgatory. It's only very recently, thanks to our forefather Martin Luther, that we've gotten rid of that concept. But people believed that. Their spirit was going to enter a waiting room. And you would wait in line to enter heaven. I want you to think about the vast diversity of different imagery and thoughts regarding resurrection, the act of the life, the spirit leaving this body and entering the spiritual world, becoming a spiritual being. Now, as good Protestants, we know that when we have questions, right, we should probably go and look in Scripture, right? Should have some ideas on this, tell us something about it, what we can expect. And so what do Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have to say about resurrection and the actual experience? And mind you, not the effects of resurrection, the actual experience of resurrection, the life leaving the body. What will it look like, feel like? What will we experience? They don't say anything at all. Nothing. And therefore the New Testament ends up being a literature with a blank at its center. A mystery. The greatest mystery of all. And into that mystery, into that blank, you are asked to pour all your devotional energy, all your faith, all your belief into that mystery. And on Easter morning, we're asked to affirm it. A mystery. Something we don't have a description of. Now, we certainly know the effects of it, don't we? The Gospels speak very much about this, right? Lots of text. Jesus Christ is risen. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. This is a guarantee. You don't have to doubt. He stands in front of people. That is 100% known. It's a fact. He is risen. So we see the effects of resurrection. He has come back from the dead. And he's very familiar to us. He looks like Jesus, doesn't he? You can embrace him. You can touch him. You can see the wounds. And he can talk to you. And he can even do seemingly everyday things. He can sit down and eat a meal with us. He can grill fish on a beach. He can do all of those things. But yet, as familiar as this Jesus is, there's no doubt he's also very different now. He can defy the very laws of physics. He can appear and disappear at will without any regard to normal means of entry or exit into a room. Resurrection, whatever that is, whatever that looked like, whatever happened, has caused a tremendous transformation. This is no longer just a physical form in front of us. This is a spiritual being. A spiritual being. And so resurrection becomes like this mysterious river. Let's pretend the aisleway. Here's my river. Okay? Over here, planet Earth. You guys are on planet Earth. You guys should understand what it's like to be on planet Earth, right? This is a known. It's a fact, right? I know what this is like. I'm here right now in this physical form. My consciousness is in this physical form. And over here, this is the kingdom of heaven. All right? Jesus Christ, the resurrected Christ, stands over here. Makes sense? That's a known. He's been raised. So we're standing over here, and you're looking across the river, and you can see Jesus Christ, right? So you know where you want to get to. You got a fact on this side, and you got a fact on this one. In the middle, you got resurrection. The spirit leaving the body. It's mysterious. How does one get across the river? Is there a bridge? Surfboard? Boat? Do I fly across? Jump across? How does that occur? That's the mystery. Now, I know some of you say, oh, it's not a mystery. I can see in your faces like, oh, I got the answer. You're like, I'm so excited, right? It's a 5-letter word, and it begins with F, and it ends with H, and what do we say? Faith, right? And some of you also, you like the other word. Starts with B, it's 7 letters, and it ends with E, and it goes believe, right? And absolutely 100%, thank you very much. You have identified the correct answer to this mystery, right? Faith in Jesus Christ gets you across the river. I want you guys to understand that. I'm perfectly clear with this. Faith in Jesus Christ gets me across the river. That's how resurrection occurs. I guess that's Easter Sunday, right? We can all go home, right? 2026 is over with. Oh, you guys know I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily. Come on now, right? We got to think deeper about this, all right? You have the correct answer. I want you to know that, okay? Always believe. You have the correct answer. Faith, believe. And now I'm going to tell you one of my personal pet peeves. One word, simplistic answers to complicated problems, okay? Oh, it drives me up a wall. All right, it really does. I think of life. Just think of your life right now. Life is complicated, complex, and messy. I've never found there to be a one-word simple answer to solve life's problems. Think of human relationships, any human relationship you want to think about. Human relationships are complicated, complex, and far more messy than we care to admit sometimes. I have never found a one-word, simplistic answer that solves the problems I face in a human relationship. So just think about this, guys. If it doesn't work, if a one-word, simple answer doesn't work here on earth, why do we believe that one word, one simple word, is going to somehow explain everything? That it's going to solve a spiritual problem, a spiritual mystery. When I told you that the New Testament is a literature with a blank at the center of it, it's a white piece of paper. Some believe that the gospel was beyond the capacity of the gospel writers to describe resurrection, and some believe it was beyond their intention, that they deliberately left it blank. Blank piece of paper. And guess what we're asked to do? We're handed a pen, we're handed a pencil, and it's time for you to affirm it, to write down some thoughts about it, to take a stab at this thing, to ponder and explore and contemplate a spiritual mystery. More than one word. What is an affirmation? A statement, a group of statements that supports and validates a truth. We're asked to think very deeply about this resurrection. We're asked to take some time to write some things down on that white piece of paper. Let me tell you about my 10th grade Algebra 2 class, okay? I had Mrs. Yates at Red Line Area Senior High School. Anybody else have Mrs. Yates? But some people, you remember Mrs. Yates. Okay, Mrs. Yates was a wonderful teacher. The only reason I passed math was because Mrs. Yates, okay? I cannot do math to save my life, okay? 1 + 1 = 3, all right? That's how it works in my world. In class, I can remember vividly, there was a kid standing, he had the seat in front of me. His name was Taylor. Taylor was a smart kid. He could do math in his head. So when he would get an assignment, there would be the math problem. He'd do the math in his head. So you know what he did? He just wrote down the correct answer. That's all he did. I'm back there filling up like 3 pages doing longhand division. Taylor just puts down the right answer. Or the other thing he did, if he was stretched for time, he pulled out a calculator, right? And he'd write down the correct answer. And he handed his assignment in. He had what? The correct answer on the page. Surely he should get 100%, right? What do you think Mrs. Yates gave him? A 0. She gave him a 0. Oh, Taylor was angry. He got up. I remember it. It's one of those Kodak moments. He marched up to Mrs. Yates' desk and he said, Mrs. Yates, how can you fail me for this? I have the correct answer to the math problem. Look, and he pulled out his calculator. This divided by this, the square root of this multiplied by this, and I get the right answer. Here you go. Correct answer. Look. And she said, Taylor, this isn't about the correct answer. She said, I need to see your work here. I need to see your thought process. I need to see how you got there. I need to see how you're thinking about this problem. And you're going to have to take the time and do all that longhand division and all that longhand multiplication and show me that you know. It's not about having just the correct answer. I know that's the correct answer. It's about showing me the thought process behind that. You know who was also a teacher? Jesus. Remember all those parables he taught us? They're complex, aren't they? You know why they're complex? The reason they're complex, that's why, thousands of pastors can stand in a pulpit and sometimes drone on endlessly, boring their congregation to tears, right? About one parable, right? Because it has so many different ways to look at it. So many different perspectives. Is there a one-word, simple answer to a parable? No. What is he trying to get us to do as his pupils? To think deeply about a spiritual world called the kingdom of heaven. He's trying to get us to have a thought process, to get our brain, the neural pathways in our brain to link up on a spiritual level and to think about this. And so I like to think that if at the end here we had a blank piece of paper placed in front of us that said resurrection, and Jesus said, hey, I'd like to see what you're thinking about this, and we just write one word and handed it, I think he'd have the same reaction Mrs. Yates had. Like, I get it, that's the correct answer, thank you, but could you give me a few more thoughts? Could you affirm this with some statement? Could you give me an attempt to think about it, to describe it? How are you getting across that river? What it's going to be like? Make an attempt to think about the first step on your spiritual journey. I know what you guys are thinking, but it's a mystery, right? That's the whole point, though. We're making an attempt to affirm this, to show a thought process, to show how we're going to live an eternal life. Will we be wrong? Probably. But we're still affirming the faith by writing down and thinking about it. Why is that important? Resurrection is the antidote to death, correct? The life eternal. We should not have to fear death. Death is beaten, right? Okay. How do we ingest that antidote? All right, let me tell you, I've worked with a lot of people who have had to face death every day. Death is like a coworker. I think of people in combat deployments, where every day they go out there and the barrel of a gun is leveled at them. And at any point, they're one bullet away from making the journey. All right? And I can tell you how those guys handle it. We all think, oh, they're really brave. Oh, they're courageous. They are just as human as the next guy. They suffer from the same fear of death. But the reason they can be calm, cool, and collected in the face of a bullet and realize I might get blown up and I might die right here, right now, is because they have thought about that river. They have thought about what the next step is going to look like. Okay? I'll tell you a story. There were two Marines on post, all right? They were in a little slit trench. I was on radio watch. I was in a little trench behind them. They sat there for 4 hours one night on post, a 22 and a 23-year-old Marine. They sat there and they talked about, if I get shot tomorrow, or I get hurt or blown up, if I die tomorrow, what's going to be the next step? What's that's going to look like? 4 hours, guys. They sat there and they affirmed the concept of resurrection. And one of them talked about how his whole life would flash before his eyes. He'd start at birth and go all the way to death. And the other one talked about how he felt like it was going to be this rushing river of spiritual knowledge. Jesus would be there at the end welcoming him in. You see the specificity, the details they gave? They didn't just say a one-word answer. They thought about it. Why? Because the next day they're going to have to leave the wire. They're going to have to go out there. They're one bullet away. And they have to, in their heads, to be able to go out there and do that job and be calm, cool, and collected in the face of death. They have to think about it. They got to be like, I know what's going to happen. I might be wrong, but I have an idea of what the next step's going to look like. I know what this is going to happen. What's going to happen? I've thought about this. Okay, and I know some of you are saying, I'm not a deep thinker. I can't do this, right? You're like, it's just easy. Can we just do one word and just call it a day on the white blank piece of paper? Let me tell you, 22 and 23-year-old Marines, both of these guys, and I love them to death, but they were not what you would call academically inclined. All right, let's just be honest. They had high school diplomas. I remember their passions in life were beer, NASCAR, and big trucks, in that order. Okay, and the only reading material I ever saw them look at were magazines, and mind you, they just looked at them, and some were inappropriate for church. All right, so don't tell me that you got to be an intellectual here, a theologian, a PhD, to make this choice to think about it. They did, 4 hours. I listened to their whole conversation. They had to, because they have to face death. They got to overcome that fear. Let's fast forward here. We'll talk about another guy, medical doctor, 84 years old. I spoke to him on Wednesday about this. He's practiced medicine for over 50 years of his life. This guy's definitely intellectually inclined. He's got Ivy League schools under his belt. And he's also Catholic. All right, he was raised in a Catholic school, and you know how severe those Catholic nuns can be. So he has a solid understanding of Scripture. And I asked him, I just said, what do you think of resurrection? And he said, sometimes my scientific background, he says, comes into conflict with this event we call resurrection, that the consciousness can leave this body. He says, sometimes my understanding of science and medicine says no. He said that. He said, without a description in the Gospels to support it, it becomes tough. And yet, and I want you to listen to these words, he said, I feel compelled to affirm it. At 84, I feel compelled to affirm it. And he said, I think often when I see death, that there's a fundamental law of the universe that energy can never die. And he said that, when we die, our cells are filled with energy. Your brain's filled with energy. Your muscles are filled with energy. That fat that you like to say you don't have is filled with energy. When we die, that energy can't die. It has to go somewhere. And he said, I wonder sometimes if that energy becomes transformed into the resurrected spirit. He said, that's why when you go to a viewing sometimes and you see the body in the casket, they don't look like the person, do they? I find it hard sometimes. I look at that, I'm like, that's not them, because the energy has left them. The spirit has fled. Think again about the detail and specificity that man used. He was compelled to affirm resurrection. He jotted something down on that white piece of paper. He took the time to do it, just like those 22 and 23-year-old Marines did it. The pilot who was just shot down, and he was just rescued this morning, and I can't thank, that's some of the most glorious news I've heard today. And I think of that guy in Iran, shot down. He is alone and unafraid. He's got a little GPS on him. He's wounded, and all he's got is a handgun. And he's got an entire country, an entire enemy army searching for him. He's got nowhere to go. He's got to run and hide every day and just hope we find him. And they did, thank God. I want you to think about, how does that man able every day to go out there with everybody, all these other guys looking for him who want to kill him? How can he do that? I can tell you how he did it. Because in his mind, he's thought about, one way or another, tomorrow or the next day, I'm going home. Either a helicopter is going to land and they're going to get me out of here, and I'm going back to the States, or I'm going home to my Creator. I've thought about that. That's how he does it. He's affirmed the faith. He's affirmed resurrection. He has thought about it. He's got some thought process behind it. If you don't, the fear is too overwhelming. Every day he needs to get up and move in order to stay alive. But he knew, I have to affirm this. I got to think about this. I got to have a thought process behind this. It's tough. It's a mystery. That's what this is all about, right? A blank piece of paper is put in front of you, and you got to write something down. You got to affirm it. You got to think about it. You got to think deeply about this. But if you can do that, I can tell you a couple things happen. One, you start to realize, once you've affirmed this, the most central mystery to our faith, resurrection, the consciousness leaving this body for the life eternal, you will realize that Christianity, it's not about what is known. It's all about the unknown. It's not about having an owner's manual of life. Rather, it's having a guidebook to life secrets. And I would be very shocked if this religion, so youthful, and it is youthful at only 2,000 years old, had revealed all of its secrets to us. And when you do that and you take the time to affirm this thing, to put some statements down, to think about it deeply, you're going to come away and say, man, I have a lot of answers, or excuse me, you have a lot of questions. And in that moment, you'll know you did it right. You should come away from that blank piece of paper with a lot of questions. I'll leave you with Herbert McCabe. He was a Dominican friar, wrote extensively on matters of God and theology and religion. He was giving a lecture once, and everybody was asking him questions about God, religion, the afterlife. And he stopped in the middle of the lecture and he said, I've just had a revelation. God is not the answer. God is the question, because a question can never die. Amen.